Welcome to the Radiant Visalia podcast. Join us at one of our two services, 9 a.m. and 10:45 a.m. Download the Church Center app or visit our website, radiantvisalia.com, to stay connected with us. All right, enjoy.
There is a heavenly city that I'm compelled to find.
I just want you to be honest and raise your hand if the thought of Proverbs 31 has ever made you roll your eyes or want to roll your eyes. Okay, good. I'm not alone. I was reading in Jen Wilkin's book, No One Like Him, that Trav had mentioned a couple weeks ago, and she starts off the book by saying, if anyone had ever told me that I was going to write a book that was going to start with a passage from Proverbs 31, I would have punched them in the face. And I just laughed out loud, so I loved it, because I think I can have the same attitude. Like, okay, it's time for women's Bible study, so that means it's going to be in Ruth or Esther or Proverbs 31, right? And it can feel a little cheesy, but it's not cheesy. And there's some really deep stuff that the Lord has for us, and so I'm really excited to jump in with you this morning. But it's more than it just being cheesy. The eye roll comes from more than just cheesiness, right? It also comes from, I think, just misuse of the woman who fears the Lord, the woman of virtue, the woman of noble character. And I think even in the church sometimes the way that it's been taught has been unhelpful and has fed our Western mentality of do. And it's just aided that, and it's put heavy weights or yokes on women to feel like, okay, I'm definitely not doing enough now, and I need to do more in order to be approved by God or by others, whatever it is. So I think there's some real hurdles that we have to get over when we come to this passage. And so I just want to kind of talk about them and get them out of the way so that we can, like we prayed at the beginning, just lay our hands on that passage and open our hearts, and with fresh eyes and ears, receive from the Lord. So this picture of this Proverbs 31 woman, like, it really is a little bit outrageous. And in my mind, I just have been seeing this like beautifully dressed woman, like skipping along with like baskets full of homemade bread and handmade things to sell. And she's like always happy. And if she ever opens her mouth, only wisdom pours out. And it's always in love and kindness, you know. This picture of this woman, like, I think it can feel a little cartoony, and over the top, you know. And it's like, who can ever be that? No one ever can. And so it's easy to have that feeling. It's easy to, if you're single, it's easy to read Proverbs 31 and feel like, okay, I don't have a husband and I don't have children, and so am I a virtuous woman? Or where's my place in the kingdom of God if my life doesn't look like this and I don't have these things? It's easy as moms with young kids to read this passage and go, not only am I not wearing clothing that I made by hand, but I didn't even change out of my pajamas today, and like my win for the day was my kids are alive, or maybe I got a shower, you know, and that was not surviving for me, that was thriving. And it's easy in different seasons of life to read this and just feel like shameful, you know, like, my life doesn't look like this, and so Am I valuable? Am I a woman of noble character if I can't pull this off? I don't think that's why God put it in the book. And I want to approach this chapter with fresh lenses of grace and see the gift that God's giving us in it. This last half of Proverbs 31 is actually a poem. It's a poem about this woman, and it is an alphabetical poem in Hebrew. So it's the A to Z of a wise, God-fearing woman. And I want our hearts to receive it today in a fresh way. It's one of the most powerful parts in the Bible on womanhood. It's the part of the Bible that speaks the most practically and intimately and specifically into womanhood. And so that's a big deal. And it is given to us it's meant to grow us in valor, and it's meant to grow us in our ability to push back darkness in the world and in our relationships through the different strengths and gifts that God's given each one of us. So it's a tool. It is a hero poem. The word virtue is actually translated as a valor. It's the same word that's used in Ruth when Boaz calls her a woman of valor. It's the same term that's used with Gideon when the angel approaches him and calls him, "You mighty man of valor." And did he feel valorous at that moment? Did his life look valorous at that moment? No, it didn't. But God called him a mighty man of valor and was calling out of him what God had put in him. And so it is a hero poem. And you all today, each one of you, no one is excluded, are mighty women of valor. And that's what I'm here to tell you. I have, since before I got married, I was living in a house with some friends, and I can remember laying on the couch one day and reading Proverbs 31, and it just, striking my heart very deeply. And I think I maybe am always hungry for, to learn and to grow. And so older women who walk with God, women who have had a lot of children, women who have made it through different stages in life, I always feel very spongy around those type of people because I just want to soak up everything they've learned, and so I can remember reading this and having some of those first feelings of I don't know how to do life, and I don't know what it means to follow God, and I want to learn from this woman. And so I've kind of always had this love in my heart for this passage, and that has only continued to grow as I've discovered more about this passage. One of the funnest things that I've learned about it is that Proverbs 31, there's a term for it, and I'm going to botch it because I don't speak Hebrew and I don't know how to pronounce it, but it's called Eshet Chayil, something like that. Chayil. Okay, yes. And it is a blessing that is either spoken over or sung over women at a particular feast in the Jewish culture. When I heard that, it felt like 180 happened in my brain in the way that I had related to this passage. It's something that the men would sing over the women at this festival. And then I found this, and it confirmed what I had heard. And it's an article saying, "Finally, I consulted Ahava, an Orthodox Jewish woman I had befriended during the project. So do Jewish women struggle with this passage as much as Christian women?" I asked. Ahava seemed a bit bewildered. "Not at all," she said. "In my culture, Proverbs 31 is a blessing." Ahava repeated a finding I discovered in my research, that the first line of the Proverbs 31 poem, "A virtuous woman who can find," is best translated, "a woman of valor who can find." In fact, the structure and diction employed in the poem closely resembles that of a heroic poem celebrating the exploits of war. "I get called Eshet Chayil, woman of valor, all the time," she said. "Make your own challah instead of buying? Eshet Chayil, woman of valor. Work to earn some extra money for your family? Woman of valor. Get promoted at your work? Woman of valor. Make balloon animals for the kids at a party? Woman of valor. Every week at the Sabbath table, my husband sings the Proverbs 31 poem to me. It's special because I know that no matter what I do or don't do, he praises me for blessing my family with the energy and with my energy and creativity. All women can do that in their own way. I bet you do as well. I looked into this, and sure enough, in Jewish culture, it is not the woman who memorizes Proverbs 31, but the men. Husbands commit each line of the poem to memory so they can recite it to their wives at the Sabbath meal, usually in song. The astute reader will notice that the only actual instruction found in the entire poem is that a husband celebrate his wife for all her hands have done. The praise is meant to be unconditional, but the blessing goes beyond the family. Ahava explained that her Jewish friends cheer one another on with the blessing, celebrating everything from promotions to pregnancies to acts of mercy and justice to battles with cancer with a hearty Eshet Chayil, woman of valor. The biblical heroine Ruth is called a woman of valor, in fact, and she is called that at a time when her life looked nothing like the life of the Proverbs 31 woman, when she was a poor, childless widow who, far from exchanging fine linens with the merchants, spent her days gleaning leftover grain from the fields. All the people of my town know that you are a woman of noble character, Eshet Chayil, Boaz says to her. I like it. No, I love it. So I set aside my to-do list and began using Proverbs 31 as it was meant to be used, not as yet another impossible standard by which to measure our failures, but as a celebration of what we've already accomplished as women of valor. When my friend Tiffany's pharmacy aced its accreditation, I congratulated her with Woman of Valor. When my sister beat out all the million applicants for a job she wanted in North Carolina, I called her up and shouted, Woman of Valor! When my mom overcame breast cancer, I made a card that said Eshet Chayil on the front of it. When I learned that 3 women had won the Nobel Peace Prize, I shared the news with my readers in a post entitled, Meet 3 Women of Valor. It's a blessing. It's a song. It's a song. And I know when I read that probably half of us in the room, the half that are single, think, I wish I had a husband that sat at the end of my table and sang this blessing over me. And I get that. But you know what the other half of the room is thinking? I wish my husband sat at the end of my table every Sunday and sang this blessing over me, right? So we're all in the same boat. And here's the amazing part. We're all married to the same man. And his name is Jesus. You see, he calls us his bride. He calls himself our husband. And he's sitting at the end of our table. And he's singing over us, Mighty Woman of Valor. And he sees everything. He sees all the triumphs and all the failures. He sees what time we get out of bed and what time we fall asleep. He's aware of all of our hands have done. And he's sitting at the end of our table, singing over us, Mighty Woman of Valor. I want you to hear his voice today. And I want you to hear his song as you read this passage again. Proverbs 31, verse 10. A wife of noble character who can find? She is worth far more than rubies. Her husband has full confidence in her and lacks nothing of value. She brings him good, not harm, all the days of her life. She selects wool and flax and works with eager hands. She's like the merchant ships bringing her food from afar. She gets up while it's still night. She provides food for her family and portions for her female servants. She considers a field and buys it. Out of her earnings, she plants a vineyard. She sets about her work vigorously. Her arms are strong for her tasks. She sees that her trading is profitable. Her lamp does not go out at night. In her hand she holds the distaff and grasps the spindle with her fingers. She opens her hands to the poor and extends her hands to the needy. When it snows, she has no fear for her household, for all of them are clothed in scarlet. She makes coverings for her bed. She is clothed in fine linen and purple. Her husband is respected at the city gate, where he takes his seat among the elders of the land. She makes linen garments and sells them, and supplies the merchants with sashes. She is clothed with strength and dignity. She can laugh at the days to come. She speaks with wisdom and the law of kindness. Oh, sorry, wrong translation. And faithful instruction is on her tongue. She watches over the affairs of her household and does not eat the bread of idleness. Her children arise and call her blessed, her husband also, and he praises her. Many women do noble things, but you surpass them all. Charm is deceptive and beauty is fleeting, but a woman who fears the Lord is to be praised. Honor her for all her works, all her hands have done, and let her works bring her praise at the city gate. Proverbs 31 is in the book of Proverbs, which is one of 3 wisdom books of the Bible. And Proverbs 31 is the last chapter of that book of Proverbs that kind of sums up or culminates the entire book in this picture of this wise woman. And we need godly wisdom in order to make it. Proverbs is an incredible, incredible resource. In fact, if you guys want to join me, when I've done Bible reading plans or whatever, I always choose the ones where they throw in a Proverbs or like a Proverbs and a Psalm every day, right? Because it helps you get through the parts of the Old Testament that are hairy. But also just reading Proverbs every day and Psalms every day is just really hugely helpful. And I can't tell you how many times, I was facing a situation and read a proverb that spoke straight into it. It's really helpful, practical, beautiful wisdom from God. And we need it. And the whole book of Proverbs, which culminates in this picture of this woman, is a call to wisdom. The whole book is about wisdom, and then it's all these nuggets of wisdom. And there's this lady who's Lady Wisdom that's walking around calling to us, and then there's instructions to us to call and cry out for wisdom. Like there's this relationship with wisdom that God's wanting us to be in. It is counsel for the stupid. It's strength for people who are weary and tired. It is warnings to the proud and foolish. It's mercy for people who are broken. It is such a rich and deep resource. It's gospel for good news. Proverbs is gospel for good news. It's salvation for the lost through wisdom of another. I mean, it is a beautiful, beautiful thing. So we have every reason to receive it with a whole heart. In Proverbs 2, I feel like Proverbs 2 is like the theme of the whole book. And it says, "My son, if you receive my words and treasure up my commandments within you, making your ear attentive to wisdom and inclining your heart to understanding. Yes, if you call out for insight and raise your voice for understanding, if you seek it like silver and search for it as for hidden treasures, then you will understand the fear of the Lord and find the knowledge of God. For the Lord gives wisdom, and from his mouth come knowledge and understanding. He stores up sound wisdom for the upright. He is a shield to those who walk in integrity, guarding the paths of justice and watching over the way of his saints. Then you will understand righteousness and justice and equity and every good path. For wisdom will come into your heart, and knowledge will be pleasant to your soul. Discretion will watch over you. Understanding will guard you. This is kind of the idea of the book of Proverbs. The theme of the book of Proverbs is there's wisdom. We need it. It comes from God. We can ask for it, and it will benefit our lives. Solomon, David's son, when he was becoming king, God came to him and asked him this question, and it was, what do you want? He just asked him for, what do you want? Like he would give him anything he wanted. Can you imagine being asked that question by God? Sorry, I have a little cold. This is not working out. So God says, what do you want? And Solomon asks, he says, I want wisdom and understanding so I can lead this people. And God was so glad that Solomon asked for that rather than all the power or all the money or, all things that would have been selfish gain. It was this place of humility of Solomon saying, I can't lead these people if I don't have wisdom from you, God, and so this is what I'm asking for. And because he asked for that, God threw everything else in as well. And so Solomon he was the wisest man that ever lived, and he had this incredible wisdom from God. In 1 Kings 10:24, it says, the whole world sought audience with Solomon to hear the wisdom God had put in his heart. It's incredible. What a gift he had. I love the story there's this story in the Bible about there was two women, friends, they had babies at the same time, and one of the mothers rolled over on her baby while sleeping, and the baby died. So there was one baby left, and she stole the other woman's baby. And they would bring conflict before King Solomon all the time to judge what was right and what to do. And so these women fighting over one baby were brought before King Solomon, and he listened to their fight, and then he said, cut the baby in half. And when he did that, the woman who was the true mother said, never mind, it's not my baby, because she cared more about saving her child's life than getting what she wanted. And this wisdom from God, he just knew, right? He knew he had that download of what question to ask, or that wisdom that kind of cuts through all the noise, right? And hits the nail on the head and reveals what is true. That's the wisdom that Solomon had. And we need that kind of wisdom from God, right? And there's so much in the Bible, and there's so much in the book of Proverbs that help us to shape our lives and make decisions. But you guys know that there's hundreds of choices a day, decisions to be made. And that wisdom that God has put in our hearts helps us to make those calls. There's so many things that's maybe it's not black and white. It's not like a sin issue or whatever. It's maybe just a practical choice, but we want to hear from the Lord, and we want to make godly and wise decisions. We want wisdom from God so that we can lead our people well, right? There's that same cry in our hearts that Solomon had. I don't know how I'll do this job, whatever job you find yourself in, if I don't have wisdom and understanding that comes from God, because the wisdom of this world is foolish and it leads to death. I don't want that kind of wisdom. I want godly wisdom. And wise people, wise Christians, wise churches, wise women are beautiful. And the world seeks them out. And so we want that type of wisdom from God living inside of us. We want the world around us that doesn't know Jesus to see the way that we're living life and go, she's got God. She hears from God. Somehow things happen and she knows what choice to make, and she's being led by God. We want them to see us living that type of life, and they go, that's beautiful. I want that. I want that kind of relationship with God. People take note, just like they did with Solomon, and the whole world outside of Israel came to him seeking that wisdom and found God. Proverbs 3:13 says, "Blessed is the one who finds wisdom, the one who gets understanding." Proverbs 4:7 says, "The beginning of wisdom is this, get wisdom." I love that passage. Get it. And whatever you get insight. Get this. You need it. It's like this desperate thing. Proverbs 8:11 says, "For wisdom is better than jewels, and all that you desire cannot compare with her." Proverbs 16:16, "How much better to get wisdom than gold. To get understanding is to be chosen rather than silver." This is the real treasure, is what it's saying. Proverbs 24:3, "By wisdom a house is built, and by understanding it is established." Proverbs 24:14, "Know that wisdom is such to your soul. If you find it, there will be a future, and your hope will not be cut off." Who needs this kind of wisdom? I do. And this is the best one. James 1:5 says, "If any of you lacks wisdom," who lacks wisdom? "You should ask God, who gives generously to all without finding fault, and it will be given to you." Isn't that the best? Generous with his wisdom, not partial, not fault finding, and all we have to do is ask. So I want you to picture Proverbs this way. It's like we're coming to a group of people, men and women, and they're huddled up in this conversation, and these people are like Yoda smart, really super smart and wise. And we get to listen in on them, in on their conversations, and as we do, we grow. We grow in the wisdom of God. And that's what we're doing here with Proverbs 31. This is who she is. She's this gift picture from God of this very wise woman. And so we get to pull up a chair and scoot in close to her for the next 6 weeks. And we get to glean, we get to listen in on her conversations, and we get to grow in wisdom that comes from God. And really, the best part is that now we know, because we have Jesus, that Jesus is the Spirit of wisdom. And that Jesus said when he was here, someone's here who's greater than Solomon. Jesus is like the wise trump card, right? He's the wisest man ever. And so now as we read back through Proverbs, we're reading about Jesus. This is his Spirit. This is who he is. This is a picture of him in this woman's life. And Jesus is our sage, our counselor, our guide, our wise man. We get to have a relationship with him and grow wise. Ray Ortland says, "In our chaotic lives of constant stop-start, short attention span mental habits, we have an endless stream of momentarily visible Twitter feed fragments of information." Just that sentence. But it kind of sums it up, doesn't it? It's like the way life feels right now. We have been reduced to one splinter factoid after another, and we are trying to patch together some kind of elegant whole worth living. That is difficult. But the problem is not just that we are fidgety and distracted. It's that our information, however much we have, is no basis for a life. We need Jesus to rescue us from our information and even from our knowledge. We need Jesus to counsel us with a new and yet ancient wisdom that come from him. Then we can live. That is what is at stake here, our living rather than our dying. And Christ speaks to us for our living, calmly, patiently, lovingly, seriously, through the book of Proverbs. This works when we deliberately slow down and listen and think and journal and pray. And so I didn't finish saying just the daily joy of being in Proverbs. That if you guys want to join me, there's 31 chapters. So in the 6 weeks we're in this study, we could just be in Proverbs every day together. And honestly, it doesn't even have to be a chapter. It could be a proverb. And that would be enough for you to marinate on for a while, So just get in there and see how the Lord speaks to you through the Proverbs over the next 6 weeks. So how do we start this wisdom journey? How do we do it? One thing we learned from James is we ask for it and we get it generously. How sweet is that? And there's something else that we get to learn from the book of Proverbs, and it's in Proverbs 9:10. And I feel like this is the hinge of the whole book, this whole book on wisdom. And there's this passage that says, Proverbs 9:10, "The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, and the knowledge of the Holy One is insight." The fear of the Lord is where we start the wisdom journey, the fear of the Lord. What is the fear of the Lord? This has been one of those phrases that has bothered me a little bit, I think, or perplexed me, or I don't know. I don't feel like I've had a real good grasp on it, the fear of the Lord. I think when I hear the phrase, she's a God-fearing woman, I just think of Marilla Cuthbert from Anne of Green Gables, high, tight bun, no makeup, and no smiling, I think of black and white photos from the 1800s where no one is smiling and everyone's wearing black. Yeah, it feels a God-fearing woman, that phrase feels very somber to me. But it was not always that. In fact, there's people in this room that can remember a time where that was used frequently, and that was very high praise. That was the way to speak of a woman who walked with God, was that she was a God-fearing woman. And we hear that phrase, the fear of the Lord, and for me, fear has to do with punishment, so I always kind of go to this bad place when I think of fear. But for those of us who are in Christ, there is no fear of punishment because that's already happened. It's done, right? So it can't be about that. For those who aren't in Christ, maybe the fear of the Lord would feel more that way. But for those of us who are in Christ, what is the fear of the Lord? And this is where I've landed for me. This is what helps me wrap my head around this thing that's very big and I think hard to explain. And it's that the fear of the Lord it's awe. It's awe. It's awe of God. The fear of the Lord it's awe and reverence for who God is, for all that God is. The fear of the Lord is wow. Wow. Wow, God. Wow. That's what the fear of the Lord is. Do you want to hear what Wikipedia thinks the fear of the Lord is? I was just curious. And I think they didn't get it half bad. It says a specific sense of respect, awe, and submission to God. The fear of the Lord as the feeling of human insignificance derived from contemplation of God's great and wonderful actions and creations. The fear of the Lord is, wow. You are huge. You are unlike anything else. You are big. I am little. I'm not insignificant to you, but I am small. The fear of the Lord is awe. It's reverence. It's, wow, God, look at you. This is just one personal story I want to share to help describe I think the process of the fear of the Lord in my life. I have 5 daughters, for those of you who don't know, and my oldest is 11, and we've just entered a new phase in life. Next year she'll be considered junior high, and we're like preteen baby, and it's just different. It's different. And it's kind of one of those first times in life that I feel like there are other things influencing her out there. And she's like aware of them and taking them in. And the last 6 months have not been easy for me. And there was just a handful of things that happened where I found out about things that had been said to her, or things that were going down at school, or just different things. And I started to freak out. And, of course, as a mother, it's our job to watch over and guard and protect our children. And, we are the biggest shaping influence in their lives, us moms and dads. But I got into like a fear place. And it was like I was obsessing over it. And I was like, I have to fix this. And so I was on this mission to try to get rid of friends, or force her into, other friends, or switch schools, or I don't know. But I don't know what I was going to do, but I was going to do something. And then when I couldn't figure out what that meant, then I started putting that on Travis. I can remember this conversation we had where it was basically what are you going to do about this? Something needs to happen, and it needs to happen now, And and so I ended up going to the Oasis Day Retreat that Full Sail puts on, and it's during the worship time, kind of at the beginning, and I open my Bible and I read kind of where I had been in Romans 11. And I read this line, and this will make sense in a minute after I finish the story, but I read this line that said, it was talking about this remnant left, this remnant of godly people. And it said they're holding on, not because of what they think they're going to get out of it, but because they are convinced of God's grace and purpose in choosing them. And it just kind of stuck in my heart, So I went and later I found a bench next to this pond. I was just by myself to be with the Lord. And Trav had been out of town for the previous week. I don't feel like I had a lot of time or space to even pray kind of about the things that had been swirling inside of me. And so I sat down and was talking with God. And I just started to talk to him about Avery, my daughter. And just all of this fear started to pour out of my heart. And, it had to do with what was going on, but it was what was going on was this, but I had taken it all the way down the road in my mind, and she's whatever, an adult not walking with God or something, I had imagined it all the way out, And that was just bringing up all there was this fear coming up in me that was God, what if I pour my whole self into mothering these girls and it doesn't turn out? That was this kind of deep, conversation inside of me. I feel I hadn't even been able to get down to. But that was really kind of what was underneath everything. So I just said it all out loud. It wasn't pretty. I just said it all out loud before God. What if, what if this happens, or what if that happens, or what if I'm not enough? No doy. what if, like, Avery ends up an internet sensation, since that's what she told me was her dream the other day? What if that happens, God? And I just sat there, like, after unloading, like, this heavy backpack I had been wearing. I didn't even know, really, that I had put it on. And, it's this beautiful setting. There's, like, a pond and, like, birds, and the wind's blowing in the trees. Just, like, nature that screams of God, But I just sat there after pouring out my cup of fear, and God just, like, before my spiritual eyes, like, just started to grow. See, it's like, in all the fear that I had been entertaining, like, he had shrunk down really small. And he just started to, like, grow, like, before my eyes, like, God. And he just started, like, reminding me of who he is and how big he is and how much he loves me and how he's the one that made Avery and not me, and how he loves her more than I do, and how her story in him is not fragile, just like my story in him is not fragile, and that he has it, and that he is powerful and all present, like I have been trying to be. Like, literally, I feel like in the spirit, I've been like this, like around Avery, just like karate chopping, like every screen and everything that, like, wants to come and taint my little girl, like, I don't want her tainted by the world, so I've been on this, like, protection ninja mission, and it's not, like, my job. Like, I can't do that. Only God can do that. And so there was just this exchange of, like, my fear for, like, wow. Wow, God, like, look at who I've been thinking I am or can be, and I can't. And wow, God, look at who you are. I'm sorry, I forgot for a little minute, God, who you were, and I needed you to remind me who you are. When we lose sight of how big and great God is, we start to put other people and things in that place. So I feel like Avery had got in there, and then I had tried to force Travis in there to, like, fix it, And when we do that, we crush ourselves and other people, because there's a space that's only meant for God, that only God can handle. And no one like him, Jen Wilkin says, I want us to consider the majesty of a limitless God. I want us to meditate on his perfections, so that they become to us the rational object of our reverence and awe. And along the way, I want us to stare down our tendency to ask others and even ourselves to be what only God is. Life is too short and too precious to spend fearing the wrong things in the wrong ways. I propose we learn holy fear for a God like no other. Only then will our fear of man be put to flight, our self-adulation be laid to rest, and our hearts be turned towards worship. I want us to become God-fearing women in the truest sense of the word, to take our stand in gladness at the foot of Mount Zion, to offer true worship to our Father in heaven, and in so doing, we will make a beginning at becoming wise. When we're walking in the fear of the Lord, it delivers us from our other fears. When we're walking in the fear of the Lord, when we're in that current and present sense of awe and wow of God, it delivers us from the fear of man. And we see this in the Proverbs 31 woman. There's 3 places where it talks about fear in Proverbs 31. The first is 31 verse 21. And it says, when it snows, she has no fear for her household, for all of them are clothed in scarlet. I love this so much. Because are scarlet-colored clothes warmer than other colored clothes? No, they're not. So what's the deal with scarlet-covered clothes? It's just an allegorical prophecy about Jesus Christ. And so when snow comes to her household, when winter comes, when hardship comes, when trouble comes, when the cold comes, when there's a season of, do we have enough? Will we be provided for? How will we eat? Will we freeze to death? When trouble comes, when hardship comes, she does not fear for her people because they are all clothed in the blood of Jesus. Isn't that an incredible picture? She does not fear for her household because they're clothed in scarlet. So whatever snow brings, whatever this next season brings, whatever hardship we face, whatever questions we have about will there be enough, she does not have to enter into that place of fear because she knows that Jesus will be there. That Jesus' blood covers her family. That his promise is to be with them into the future. And that is an incredible picture. When it snows, she has no fear for her household, for all of them are clothed in scarlet. Then again, in verse 25, it's another reference to fear. It says, she is clothed with strength and dignity. Again, that clothing line. She's put on something outside of herself. She's put on someone else's strength. She's clothed with strength and dignity. She can laugh at the days to come. There's another translation that says, she looks to the future and laughs. This is like one of my favorite pictures in the whole Bible. A woman clothed in God that can look to the future and laugh. This is the best spiritual warfare I can ever imagine. This laugh makes the devil shudder, this laugh. Because who can look to an unknown future? Especially in the world we live in with all of this crap going on, and laugh. Who can do that? Who doesn't read the newspaper and think it's getting worse and worse and grow with trembling fear like the whole world is fearing? She's clothed in God. And so she can laugh at the days to come because she knows, again, that he will be with her. This woman can laugh at the future because she is more overwhelmed by God than she is by anything else in this world. She's walking in the fear of the Lord. Wow. Wow. God has overwhelmed her more than anything else. So she can think about the future and laugh. It's incredible. It's incredible. If I'm looking at something and I'm saying, whoa, and I'm not looking at God and saying, whoa, I'm going to be not walking in the fear of the Lord. If I am wowed by anything more than I'm wowed by God, if I am wowed by anything more than I'm wowed by God, I will not be walking in the fear of the Lord. If I'm woed by anything more than I'm woed by God, I will be bound in fear to that thing. If I'm wowed by anything more than I'm wowed by God, I'll make that thing an idol and I'll worship that thing because I'm trying to put it in that place. What is woeing your heart right now? Like, what is the thing, like, for me with Avery that was just kind of taking up that space of thought and fear and overwhelming me? What is that for you? Or what is wowing your heart right now? Like, what's taking up that place and capacity in your heart to go, wow, to awe? Because if anything else is but God, you won't be walking in the fear of the Lord. And then you won't be walking in the wisdom of God, which we need in order to do life. We have to have the fear of the Lord. We have to have the fear of the Lord when we're walking through trouble, because if we don't have it, we will be completely overwhelmed and crushed by that thing we're facing. If we don't see God as bigger and more wonderful and more powerful and more able than the thing that we're facing, we will be destroyed by that thing. And also, maybe life's easy and good right now and you're not walking through something difficult. But if we're not walking in the fear of the Lord, we will become completely complacent and we will fall asleep. And that is a sad, sad way to live this life that God's given us. We have to have the fear of the Lord. We have to be God-fearing women. We need it in order to live, and we need it in order to make it. We have to have it. The fear of the Lord is saying, I am not the measure of all things. I am one who is measured. I am one who is measured by the one who is the measure of all things. I am small, he is big. He must increase, I must decrease. That's the fear of the Lord. And I love it because as I started looking up scriptures in Proverbs about the fear of the Lord, they were always either connected to humility or pride, which is perfect, right? So in Proverbs 22:4, it says, humility is the fear of the Lord. Its wages are riches and honor and life. In Proverbs 15:33, it says, wisdom's instruction is to fear the Lord, and humility comes before honor. In Proverbs 3, verse 7, it says, do not be wise in your own eyes, fear the Lord and shun evil. And in Proverbs 23:17, it says, do not let your hearts envy sinners, but always be zealous for the fear of the Lord. Be zealous for it. Be hungry and passionate about living in the fear of the Lord. Proverbs 1:32 also says that the complacency of fools destroys them. Just want to call us to a fresh awakening to the awe and wow of God. To be zealous, to live in that place of being overwhelmed by God. That's the place he wants us to live. And if we're living in a place overwhelmed by him, then we won't be overwhelmed by other things. What happens inside of people who are seeing God in powerful new ways, who live in that place of revelation and fear of the Lord? It's just a good place to live. And that's where God wants us to live. And can we be that? Can we be those women that live in that place? Is your soul in that place today? Is mine? Can we go there together? Can we stir each other up in the fear of the Lord? At the very end of Proverbs 31, they stand her up and they praise her. And the thing that they say about this woman that makes her so wonderful is charm is deceptive and beauty is fleeting. It ain't gonna last, girls. but the woman who fears the Lord is to be praised. She was a God-fearing woman. She lived in the wow of God. And so he overwhelmed her heart, not anything else. Worship team, will you come? Just felt like the only way to respond this morning was to worship. And I want to create space for you. If there is anything that is woeing your heart, if there are fears that have grown up and the fear of the Lord has shrunk down, I just want to create space for you to pour it out and let him expand and put your heart in that place to just be wowed and overwhelmed by God again. Did you guys ever read the book, The Wind in the Willows? I'm going to read a quote out of it. And anyone who wants to join me on your knees, you can. This is when Rat and Mole go looking for baby otter, and they stumble into the presence of God. It says, "Suddenly, the mole felt a great awe fall upon him, an awe that turned his muscles to water, bowed his head, and rooted his feet to the ground. It was no panic terror. Indeed, he felt wonderfully at peace and happy. Rat, he found breath to whisper, shaking. Are you afraid? Afraid, murmured the rat, his eyes shining with unutterable love. Afraid of him? Oh, never, never. And yet, oh mole, I am afraid. And then the two animals, crouching to the earth, bowed their heads and did worship. That is the fear of the Lord. That is the beginning of wisdom. Father, let that kind of awe fall upon us. Let us walk and live in that kind of awe. We want to live in wow of you, God. We want to be overwhelmed by your majesty, by your beauty, by your love, by your capability, by your power and might, by your wisdom, by your mercy and grace. You must increase, God. We must decrease. Show us the fear of the Lord. Teach us the fear of the Lord, that it would send all our other fears to flight. We worship you. Expand, God. Let our view of you, let our knowing of you, let our scope of you grow, Father. In Jesus' name, amen.
Thanks for listening. We want to be a resource for you as you walk with Jesus. So please connect with us at radiantvisalia.com. Until next time.
There is a heavenly city that I'm to find. Oh, I love the flowers and trees and the smell of the grinding sea and all the beautiful things here in life. And I